Inside Black Dolphin, the daily routines that shock the world. Before we dive into this dark corner of the world, hit subscribe because what you're about to hear, most prisons would never want the public to know. The storm had already started when the call came in. A frantic radio transmission, crackling with urgency, sliced through the night air. A guard from Black Dolphin Prison, one of the most heavily fortified correctional institutions on the planet, had failed to check in during his perimeter sweep. It was a routine walk, a familiar path behind the razor-wire fences, where even the wind sounded like it moved under surveillance. But now he was gone. Authorities scrambled across the grounds with flashlights cutting through the rain. No one vanished from Black Dolphin. Not guards. Not inmates. Especially not here. Black Dolphin was a place built for those the courts had declared too dangerous to ever walk freely again. Once you entered, your world shrank to a concrete box and a clock that moved slower than death. Every movement was calculated. Every sound echoed with cold intention. Tonight, something felt off. When the search team reached the far edge of the northern yard, they found the guard's flashlight lying perfectly centered on the ground, facing upward. Still on. Still warm. It looked almost placed, but the guard was nowhere in sight. Inside the control room, alarms blared as cameras were pulled up one by one. The screens flickered, showing empty corridors, locked steel doors, and the endless, silent march of fluorescent lights. Everything appeared normal, too normal, until an officer zoomed in on cell block D. A single inmate stood completely still, staring directly into the camera, not blinking, eyes wide like he had waited his entire life for someone to notice. His name was Mikhail Arkanov. Convicted of orchestrating one of the largest bank heists in Eastern Europe, he was known for his silence. He rarely spoke, never reacted, and followed orders with unsettling obedience. But now, something in his expression had changed. Investigators rushed towards cell block D, boots pounding against the concrete. When they arrived, Arkanov hadn't moved. His eyes stayed locked on the hallway as if he could see beyond the steel bars. As if he knew something they didn't. "Where is Officer Lebedev?" one of the guards demanded. Arkanov slowly tilted his head, studying their faces with a faint, almost curious smile. "Check the routine logs," he whispered. Those were the first words he had spoken in nearly 2 years. The guards exchanged confused looks but followed protocol, pulling up the printed log for the day. Each inmate's routine, wake up, cell inspection, meals, exercise rotations, was scheduled to the minute. Black Dolphin ran like clockwork. No skipped steps. No deviations. But today something was wrong. 2 inmates had been scheduled for a transport rehearsal, a standard drill preparing them for possible movement to another facility. According to the log, one of those inmates was Arkanov. Yet Arkanov hadn't left his cell the entire day. He had been counted, verified, and locked in. So, who participated in the drill under his name? The more they looked, the more anomalies they found. A signed confirmation from a guard who wasn't on duty. A timestamp that didn't match the security footage. And then a signature belonging to Officer Lebedev, the missing guard. Pressure built in the room as the investigators flipped pages back and forth. Someone inside had forged movements, created false confirmations, and manipulated the routines so precisely it blended into the system. Nothing in Black Dolphin went unnoticed, unless someone wanted it to be. The warden ordered a full lockdown, and the prison's architecture came alive like a steel monster awakening. Gate after gate sealed shut. Lights brightened. Alarms echoed along the stairwells. Inmates were forced into the standing position Black Dolphin was notorious for, heads down, hands behind their backs, while guards swept every corner. The entire prison seemed to breathe in anticipation. Back in cell block D, Arkanov looked almost calm amid the chaos. A guard approached him again. "What do you know about Lebedev's disappearance?" Arkanov's eyes narrowed. "You should be asking why he trusted the routine more than the people who control it." His answer made no sense, and far too much sense, all at once. Investigators were now convinced that whatever happened was an inside operation. Someone had exploited the prison's rigid structure, weaving deception into the very schedule that governed every second of every day. The routines weren't just precise. They were predictable. And predictability, in the wrong hands, was power. As officers reviewed the surveillance feed a third time, searching for any trace of Lebedev, a sudden blackout struck the system. Every screen went dark. Every feed died. When the monitors flickered back to life, a single video file appeared in the center of the screen, one that hadn't been there before. Its label was chillingly simple: Routine_0. A guard clicked it open. The footage showed a dim hallway deep inside the prison, one no longer used for regular operations. At the end of the hall was an old, locked basement door that hadn't been opened in years. But someone had placed Officer Lebedev's ID badge on the ground in front of it, and the badge was still dripping with water. The warden stared at the screen, her voice steady but tight. "Open that basement door." What they found changed everything. The heavy hinges groaned as the basement door opened, releasing a gust of cold, stale air that felt untouched for years. Flashlights swept across the staircase, leading downward. Dust floated in the beams like drifting ash. No one spoke as the team stepped inside. Even the guards who had worked at Black Dolphin for decades admitted later that something about that hallway felt wrong, as if the prison itself was holding its breath. At the bottom of the stairs, a narrow corridor stretched ahead, lined with old storage rooms once used for equipment. Most were empty, but one door at the far end had a fresh scrape along the frame, metal on metal, as if it had been opened recently despite being listed as sealed. Officer Lebedev's ID badge hadn't been dropped. It had been placed, deliberately, like a signpost. The warden ordered the door opened. Inside, they found no signs of struggle, no indication of an attack, and no trace of Lebedev himself. But the room wasn't empty. Someone had built a small workstation, a desk lamp, a chair, a stack of outdated routine logs, and a digital recorder still warm to the touch. Next to it lay a folder marked only with a single number: 0 to 13. The warden's voice was low. "This room isn't on any current map of the facility." One of the investigators searched the drawer beneath the desk and froze. "Ma'am, you need to see this." Inside were duplicated keys, forged signatures, and an access card capable of overriding internal doors. It was carefully organized, methodical, and deeply familiar. Anyone who understood Black Dolphin's rigid structure could feel it immediately. Whoever worked here knew the routines better than the prison administration itself. But that wasn't the most disturbing discovery. Pinned to the wall were pages torn from daily logbooks, all with the same 2 inmate names circled repeatedly. One of them was Mikhail Arkanov. The other belonged to a man transferred out of the prison 6 years earlier. Except, according to the old files stacked on the desk, that man had never officially left. The warden stepped back, her pulse tightening. "Who has access to these old records?" "Only senior staff," an investigator answered. "And Lebedev?" "He wouldn't. He wasn't high enough." The implications settled over the room like a shadow. Someone with authority had been coming down here. Someone who had the ability to erase, alter, and reassign inmate routines without raising suspicion. Someone who understood how to hide movements inside a system designed to detect everything. One guard pointed to a dusty metal cabinet in the corner. "There's something else here." Inside the cabinet were dozens of small notebooks filled with handwritten notes, observations about inmate behavior, guard shifts, blind spots in the surveillance patterns. Every detail was cataloged. Whoever wrote them wasn't planning an escape. They were studying the prison like a puzzle. The warden lifted one of the notebooks, flipping through the pages. "These entries, they're not written by an inmate. These are evaluations. Someone's been monitoring the monitors." Suddenly, a loud buzz crackled through the radios. "Control room to search team, you need to come back immediately. We found something." The team rushed back upstairs, leaving the cold basement behind. When they entered the control room, a technician pointed at the surveillance grid. "Look at this feed." It was Arkanov's cell, but he was gone. The cell door hadn't been opened. The lock codes hadn't been touched. And yet the cell was empty, the bed still made, the air unsettlingly still. The camera had glitched for less than 2 seconds, just a flicker, and then he was gone. "How is that possible?" a guard demanded. No one answered. The warden leaned over the console. Pull up the previous day's logs. See if anything matches the anomalies from the basement. As the files loaded, a chilling pattern appeared in the timestamps. Every day for nearly 6 months, the logs listed Arkanov as participating in activities he had never attended. Exercise rotations, meal hall shifts, medical checks, transport rehearsals. He had always been in his cell. But the logs had built an alternate version of him, a shadow Arkanov, moving through the prison in place of someone else. Someone who didn't want to be tracked. And the ID number associated with those forged logs matched the folder found in the basement. 0 to 13. An investigator whispered. What if Arkanov wasn't the target?
What if he was the mask?
Before they could process the idea, the alarms blared again, this time with a different tone. A full internal breach warning. Not from a gate. Not from a fence. From inside the administrative wing. The team sprinted down the corridor toward the office section. Papers littered the floor. A drawer was pulled open. A window latch hung loose, swinging slightly as the wind pushed against it. Someone had left the building minutes earlier. On the desk lay a small envelope with no name. Inside it was a single sheet of paper, the same uniform stock used for inmate routine logs. But instead of schedules, it held a handwritten message. The warden read it aloud. The routine hides everything, even the truth. If you want to find Lebedev, stop following the schedule and start following the person who wrote it. A silence fell over the room. Because every guard, every administrator, and every investigator knew one thing. Only one person in the entire facility had ever written the full routine system from scratch. And he wasn't assigned to Black Dolphin anymore. He had disappeared 10 years earlier. Or so they thought. The revelation struck the room like a silent explosion. 10 years. 10 years since the architect of Black Dolphin's routine system vanished without explanation. His name had faded from active duty logs, his office sealed, his files scattered across departments that never bothered to reconnect the dots. No one questioned it. In a prison where everything followed a pattern, his disappearance became just another entry on a list of administrative transfers. But now they realized it was the first move in a much larger game. His name was Gennady Markovich, former operations strategist, known for designing the facility's time-regulated inmate movement structure. Staff often joked that he knew the prison better than the concrete did. He memorized guard rotations, door timings, camera blind spots, and behavioral triggers. What no one knew at the time was that Markovich didn't just build the routines. He built a way to hide inside them. Within minutes, investigators dug up his old personnel file. One line stood out. Status, reassigned. Internal transfer. Destination, classified. But the transfer had never been recorded in the national system. It was a ghost transfer, the same kind used to move high-risk undercover personnel or protect witnesses. Except Markovich wasn't either of those things. Someone had helped him disappear. And now it seemed he had come back. The warden gathered the security team in the briefing room, the tension thick enough to feel in the air. Arkanov didn't escape, she said.
He was removed.
By someone who knows exactly how to rewrite the system without sounding alarms. Everything leads back to Markovich. A guard added, if he planned this, then Lebedev might still be alive. He could be holding him somewhere. Another investigator shook his head. Or he's using Lebedev to complete whatever he started 10 years ago. They didn't know which possibility was worse. Moments later, a dispatcher from the perimeter unit burst into the room. Ma'am, you need to see this. He handed over a tablet showing a newly triggered motion alert from a camera near the old industrial wing, a part of the prison closed during renovations. The feed displayed a single figure walking through the abandoned loading area. Head down. Hood up. He wasn't running. He was waiting. The warden didn't hesitate. Form a team. Bring him in. As guards fanned out across the industrial wing, the echo of their boots mixed with the metallic creaks of the old structure. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Fog seeped under the broken window frames. It was a part of the prison untouched by routine, the perfect place for someone who understood the system to move freely. A guard's voice broke over the radio. We found him. The figure stood calmly in the middle of the room, hands visible. When the guards approached, he slowly lifted his head. It wasn't Markovich. It was Arkanov. Except not the silent, emotionless Arkanov they knew. His eyes were sharp, alert, almost relieved. He raised his hands higher. "I'm not here to run," he said. "I'm here to show you the truth." Guards surrounded him immediately, cuffing him before he could take another step. "Where is Lebedev?" a sergeant demanded. Arkanov looked up, breathing steadily.
Alive.
"For now. But you'll never find him following the routine." "Where is Markovich?" the warden snapped. Arkanov's expression shifted. Not fear, but recognition of a name that carried weight. "He's been here longer than you think." The team escorted Arkanov down the hall toward the processing area, but as they turned the corner, he spoke again, this time quietly. "Check the sub-basement. The second one. The one none of you know exists." The warden froze. Black Dolphin had no second sub-basement. At least not officially. Minutes later, a structural map from 1987 revealed something shocking. Before Black Dolphin expanded, the original architects had built an underground annex. According to the blueprint, the entrance had been sealed, paved over during renovations. Access point. Beneath the industrial wing. The guards tore away the loose boards and broken tiles until they uncovered a rusted metal hatch. It took 3 men to turn the wheel. The hatch opened with a metallic scream that echoed through the prison. A steep staircase spiraled into darkness. Descending into the hidden chamber felt like stepping outside time. The air grew colder. The silence deepened. And at the bottom was a corridor lined with old office rooms, abandoned, forgotten, untouched. Except one. A faint light glowed under the far door. The warden pushed it open. Inside, Officer Lebedev sat in a chair, unharmed, conscious, shaken but alive. His hands were tied loosely with a strip of cloth, as if whoever restrained him wanted him found. He looked up, eyes wide with relief. "He's here," Lebedev whispered. "He's been here for years." Behind the desk stood a tall, thin man with a calm expression and eyes that seemed to see everything. Gennady Markovich. He didn't run. Didn't resist. He simply closed the notebook he had been writing in, one identical to the notebooks found in the basement room. "You're late," he said. "I left more than enough clues." The warden stepped forward.
Why?
"Why any of this?" Markovich exhaled slowly, almost tired. "Black Dolphin has been running on a broken system for years. I tried to fix it. No one listened. So I created a flaw in the routine, a flaw only I could see. The routines became blind. Predictable. And in that predictability, corruption grew." He gestured to Lebedev. "He found the flaw by accident. I brought him here, so he could understand it." "Why involve Arkanov?" an investigator demanded. Markovich nodded toward the inmate. He was the only one who noticed the inconsistencies. He was observant, a mirror to the system. The warden's voice trembled with restrained anger. "You manipulated the logs, hid your movements, created shadow inmates. Do you understand the chaos you caused?" Markovich's reply was chilling in its simplicity. "I revealed the chaos that already existed. There was no confrontation, no struggle." Guards placed him in restraints and began the long walk back up the spiral staircase. As they emerged into the industrial wing, dawn's first light spilled through the broken windows, cutting across Markovich's face. Arkanov, escorted separately, looked back once, not with defiance, but with a strange calm, as though he had finally solved a puzzle no one else could see. Black Dolphin returned to order over the following days. Routines were rewritten. Logs were audited. Every hidden flaw Markovich built into the system had to be unraveled one by one. But the part that unsettled investigators the most was this. Markovich never attempted to escape. He never hid his trail. He wanted to be found. As he was led past the warden during processing, he paused. "You think you understand the routines now," he said softly. "But the real question is, who was altering them long before I started?" The warden's blood ran cold. Because there was no answer. Not yet. And 3 months later, when a guard discovered another forged routine log, with an unfamiliar signature and a new, unexplained inmate movement, one thing became clear. Markovich wasn't the only one writing the system. Someone else was still inside Black Dolphin, watching, guiding,
And waiting.
If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.